GM Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles prioritized adding defensive talent early in the 2024 NFL Draft. Keith, your thoughts on Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo and Cooper DeJean from Iowa?
It was a need. And I remember watching during the 2023 NFL season, right? It was probably around week 9 to 10 where it started being question marks of this secondary, right? And then it was like, hey, they're starting to play bad, right? And then came week 12, the conversation was still, hey, they're starting to play bad, right? Then it was week 15. And when I started to realize is this, they can address this problem in season, right? So you need to go to the NFL draft and get better with some young guys. And I like it because these guys are complementary pieces, right? Quinyon Mitchell, he's going to be more of your in-your-face, right? He can, he's quick twitch, he's explosive, ball skills type of guy. And then Cooper DeJean has a little bit more length, right? He's probably more of a cover 3 type of guy, but you can mix and match what you're doing with those two football players. And you look at this roster the way it is right now, they have some young guys, but I think training camp for the Philadelphia Eagles, if you can get a ticket, it's going to be really fun because those guys are going to have to compete their butt off for a roster spot because they not only went one corner, they went 2 corners.
Absolutely. I love the talent they also added behind the corners. And Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian, the kid that was at the Senior Bowl, we got live eyes on him. He's an interesting player, Keith. This is a guy who's a transfer from Cornell, former safety, and now he lives along the defensive front. He had one of the most violent collisions at the Senior Bowl with him and Javon Foster, tackle from Missouri. He gets after it along the trenches. And the Eagles, look, they draft edges every single year. It doesn't matter if it's round 1, round 7. And we also talk about these Georgia guys as well. Along the interior, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. There is no more Fletcher Cox. So getting another young talent like Jalix Hunt to compete off the edge is going to be important for Philadelphia.
No, I agree 100%. And the Philadelphia Eagles, this is Howie Roseman, right? Finding one of those guys that he falls in love with, right? That, plays a style of football that he feels is transferable to the NFL. So I think Jalix Hunt, he's a good project to have. But I like how they finished up, right? Yeah. And that's with Philadelphia Eagle legacy, Jeremiah Trotter.
Of course they drafted him, right?
Right, of course. It's the same thing with Joey Porter Jr. last year.
Absolutely.
Right? Of course he falls to the top of the second round, and just so happened the Steelers has that pick. But I like it, though, because what you're going to do is you're going to figure out that Nakobe Dean situation, right? Nakobe Dean is still there. Jeremiah Trotter, you got to, hey, one of y'all young guys has to get this figured out and play some high-level football because they both played good football in college. Now it's time to see how do we get that to happen in the NFL.
They've had a lot of bodies in the middle of that Philadelphia defense. Alex Singleton, they brought in Darius Leonard. Now it's a guy like Jeremiah Trotter. They drafted Nakobe Dean. It's interesting to see what they're going to do at the second level because you add all those guys along the front, but who's behind them? And that's what's going to be a key because really your defensive core, we see it in San Francisco. We see it in Baltimore. Defense core starts at the linebacker position. And speaking of other guys that I really like in this draft, Keith, grabbing Johnny Wilson, wide receiver from Florida State, a big physical target to hopefully for Philadelphia fans out there, take the attention off of the newly extended A.J. Brown and, of course, Devontae Smith and as well Dallas Goedert up the seam. I like the Johnny Wilson and the value that they got with him on day 3.
Yeah, and I like Johnny Wilson so much that even in our mock draft, right, before day 2, I took Johnny Wilson to the Philadelphia Eagles in round 2 because that's how high of a prospect, how high I think of him as a prospect. You think about Devontae Smith, you think about A.J. Brown. Johnny Wilson is 6'6", almost 6'7", right? And he has that short area quickness, explosive thing, that explosiveness that you're not supposed to have for a wide receiver. So I like that a lot. Jalen Hurts, right? We talk about, is he an accurate quarterback? Is he an inaccurate quarterback? I think Johnny Wilson can help cover up a couple of those things. And then you ask yourself this, is he just another big inline tight end, right, that you can flex out from time to time, and then he's a middle of the field operator?
I love the additions they made from a personnel perspective. Also, as we know, GM Howie Roseman's always playing in the present and for the future. 9 trades for Howie Roseman on draft day, a record since 1990 when draft trades were tracked. So he's making moves for next year, acquired a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th for 2025. Overall, Keith, you look at this draft class, what's your grade for the Philadelphia Eagles here in 2024?
I give it a B+. I thought it was a really good draft. I thought it was a solid draft. I think this, though, I want to reflect back to the past couple of years. And we've seen the Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman, he drafted a lot of guys from Georgia, right? And we praised him. We was like, man, this guy went after national championship teams, and he's drafted all of these football players, the Nolan Smiths, the Keely Ringles, right, the Jalen Carters, the Jordan Davis. But the question is, and I think it's going to be reflective in this class, is will those guys actually pan out? We're sitting here a year later and like, hey, well, those talented guys from those national national championship teams where they're showing up at, and they haven't necessarily showed up. But with guys like Fletcher Cox retiring, it's time for those guys to step up. So we will see, but I think it is a B+.
It's also a team that also lost Jason Kelsey on the offensive line. It's a little bit of a turn of events here. The Eagles in 2024 as a disappointing 2023. Hopefully they work back to the top of the NFC East and a potential another Super Bowl berth in the NFC.